The wind doesn't blow through Beelitz the way it blows everywhere else. It moves slowly, like it's afraid to disturb something, like it knows what happened here, 70 kilometers southwest of Berlin, hidden inside a pine forest so dense the sunlight arrives in thin, broken strips. There is a place that Germany has never fully been able to explain. A place that healers built, that killers claimed, and that time, for reasons nobody understands, has refused to erase. Its name is Beelitz-Heilstätten, and the walls remember everything. It began with good intentions. It almost always does. In 1898, the city of Berlin was choking. Tuberculosis was spreading through the crowded working-class neighborhoods like a whisper that became a scream. The sick needed air, space, pine trees and clean wind and distance from the coal smoke of the city. So they built a world. Not just a hospital. A world. 60 buildings spread across 200 hectares of forest. Separate wings for men and women. A church. A bakery. A butcher. Power station. A theater where recovering patients could watch plays on Saturday evenings. They thought of everything. The architecture was beautiful. Red brick buildings with tall arched windows, ornate cornices, elegant staircases. The kind of beauty that says, you matter, your healing matters. At its peak, 4,000 patients lived here, walking the forest paths between treatments, breathing the pine air that doctors believed could pull the sickness from their lungs. For a time, it worked. For a time, Beelitz was genuinely a place of healing. Then 1914 arrived, and everything changed. The war swallowed young men by the millions. And in 1916, one of them arrived at Beelitz-Heilstätten, a thin, pale, 27-year-old Austrian corporal from the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment, wounded in the left thigh during the Battle of the Somme. He spent nearly 2 months here. He walked these same forest paths. He looked through these same tall windows at the same pine trees moving in the same slow wind. His name was Adolf Hitler. Nurses who treated him later described him as quiet, withdrawn. He rarely spoke to other patients. He spent hours staring at the forest through the window of his ward, his eyes carrying something they couldn't name, something that made them uncomfortable in a way they couldn't explain. He recovered. He left. He came back 27 years later, not as a patient, as the reason the hospital would become something else entirely by 1939. Beelitz-Heilstätten had been transformed. The tuberculosis patients were quietly moved. The beautiful wards were emptied of their original purpose and filled with a new one. The hospital became a military medical facility for the Wehrmacht. The Nazi war machines wounded soldiers, brought here from the Eastern Front, from North Africa, from the collapsing edges of an empire that was eating itself alive. The operating theaters ran day and night. The basement corridors, originally built for laundry and storage, became something the staff rarely spoke about. Procedures happened there that were not recorded in any official document. Patients arrived through certain entrances and did not leave through any entrance at all. A nurse who worked here during those years, her name was Margarethi, and she gave one interview once to a local historian in 1987, 3 months before she died. Said only this: there were wards we were told never to enter, not because of infection, not because of protocol. We were told never to enter them because of what we might see. Most of us obeyed. I obeyed. I have asked God to forgive me for obeying every day since 1945. She did not say what was behind those doors. She took that answer with her. When the Soviet army swept through Brandenburg in April 1945, they took Beelitz-Heilstätten without a battle. The German staff fled overnight, leaving behind equipment, files, half-finished surgeries, and patients who could not walk. The Soviets kept the hospital running. For 50 years, Beelitz-Heilstätten operated as a Soviet military hospital, treating Red Army soldiers stationed in East Germany. The buildings were maintained. The wards were used. And yet, somehow, certain sections were never reopened. Certain basement corridors were locked with Soviet padlocks and left. Nobody asked why. In 1994, the last Russian soldier left German soil. Beelitz-Heilstätten was abandoned overnight. Again. And it was in the years following that abandonment that the story of Margarethe Karl began to circulate. In 2000, a historian named Dr. Albrecht Fries was documenting the site when a local elderly woman approached him in the forest outside the main building. She told him her name was Elsa. She said she had grown up in the nearby village. She said that as a child in 1943, she had once wandered onto the hospital grounds on a dare and had looked through a basement window. She said she saw a room full of beds. She said the people in the beds were not moving, but their eyes were open. She said a man in a white coat saw her at the window and simply walked toward her very slowly without running, without shouting, just walking, and she ran and never came back. Dr. Fries searched the records for that basement ward. He found no records, not missing, not destroyed, simply never created. Today, Beelitz-Heilstätten is partially open to the public. A neurological rehabilitation clinic operates in the southern section, still healing people, still using the pine air and the quiet forest, as it was originally designed to do. But the northern section stands empty. Urban explorers come from across Europe. They photograph the peeling paint, the collapsed ceilings, the old wheelchairs sitting in the middle of wards as though someone stood up and simply walked away. They photograph the operating theaters with their tilted lamps still hanging overhead. The children's ward, where tiny iron beds are still lined against the walls, their mattresses rotted through but their frames perfectly intact. Every explorer says the same thing when they leave. Not that it was frightening. Not that they saw something they couldn't explain. They all say it was the silence. A silence that feels occupied. A silence that has texture and weight. A silence that makes you feel, not that you are alone, but that you are being watched by something that has learned to be very, very patient. In 2016, a construction crew renovating one of the northern buildings broke through a sealed wall in the basement. Behind it was a small room. Inside the room were 16 folding chairs arranged in a perfect circle. In the center of the chairs was a single iron table. On the table was a glass of water. The water was not dusty. It was not evaporated. It was full. The construction crew reported it to the site manager. By the time anyone else came to see it, the room had been resealed. The site manager said it was a safety issue. He has not given any interviews since. Beelitz-Heilstätten still stands in its pine forest, 70 kilometers from Berlin. The wind still moves slowly through its corridors. And if you visit on a quiet Tuesday morning, when the tourists haven't arrived yet and the rehabilitation clinic is just beginning its day, stand still, listen, and ask yourself why a place this empty never quite feels alone.